So I don't know if I've talked about this publicly before. We are we're per, we're in, we just finished our second year of field trials to use the algae as a soil amendment. And what that means is instead of using it for turf grass fertilizer, where you actually the goal is nitrogen, phosphorus to fertilize the turf grass, but rather use the algae as a soil amendment to improve soil health. And the value of improving soil health for row crops like corn and wheat, alfalfa, potatoes, we've done these trials and we've demonstrated that our algae, when it's applied to these crops, you can increase yield. You can reduce the amount of fertilizer inputs you need to. And guess what? Instead of that algae being worth 25 cents, we can offer an ROI to the farmer of 3 to 4x and charge $5, $10 a kilogram. Well, now if there's that much value for the algae, we share that with the customer, which is what we'll do over the next several years. Now we're really offsetting the costs of treatment for them.
In the summer of 2014, I was in summer school at the University of Arkansas, and I was broke. I worked a bunch of odd jobs that summer, but one really stood out. A professor of mine was trying to determine how much biofuel algae could produce. Gas was at an all-time high, and there was funding to figure out feasible alternatives to fossil fuels. The catch was, he was growing algae with pig poop at one of Arkansas's many pig farms. The concept was twofold: treat nasty pig waste to preserve Arkansas's waterways while creating a sustainable, growable biofuel. The pig waste was pumped to the top of a hill and fell by gravity along a carpeted runway with algae growing in the hot Arkansas sun. And as an undergrad, I was given the job of harvester. We were given squeegees and told to collect as much algae as we could from these lanes covered in pig poop and algae. We did it for $9 an hour and a resume boost, and this was my first wastewater job. Little did we know, just 400 miles away, a professor and a postdoc were working on this exact same thing in Ames, Iowa. Except instead of pig waste and squeegees, they were building an automated, hands-off algae production facility for biofuel. They used a greenhouse to boost CO2 and maintain temperature. They used motors and rotors and cloth for the algae to hold on to. And it was working. They were growing algae faster than everyone else. You've probably seen news about toxic algal blooms making water poisonous. Concerns over rampant algae growth has organizations like the Illinois EPA considering how to curb algal growth to protect drinking water and the local ecosystem. These initiatives put pressure on wastewater districts like Chicago's, and they were being told to reduce the amount of phosphorus they were discharging from their plant. So, Chicago's innovation team asked the question, why not use algae at the facility to fight the algal blooms in the environment? Scouring the floor at the Algae Industry Conference, Chicago's innovation team found Martin Gross and Dr. Wen and loved their algae growing technology. They wanted to take this lab-scale algae growing machine and apply it to the largest wastewater facility in America.
Yeah, it's like you can't write the script, right? It's incredible. So, now that I've been in the wastewater industry for 10 years, it's like, man, trying to get a customer to test your system like Chicago, like you can work years to try to do this, and we just really lucked into it, and we did because at that time, MWRD Chicago, they were getting stricter phosphorus permits, and they were also looking at doing phosphorus removal sustainably. And to the foresight of really two individuals there, Dr. Kuldeep Kumar, who's still with the district, and a gentleman named Tom Kunitz, who was previously the president of WEF, they thought, wow, algae seems like a really great way to remove this phosphorus and do it in a sustainable way. And they actually attended that conference just to look for algae systems, and they really liked the benefits that I was talking about on our system. They said, if algae is going to be used for wastewater, this is the type of system that makes a lot of sense. And they actually, MWRD pulled us into treating wastewater, and it's been a really great relationship with them over the years. And we actually have multiple patents where they're co-invent, innovations on the RAB system with us. So they're actually have participated actively in the innovation of the system through the years as well.
I mean, what a home run. That's a lot of success right off the bat. Oh my gosh, you're working with Chicago. How does it go? Are you nervous? I mean, you go from kind of just this, maybe it's still bench scale at this point, but, it's still very immature, if you will.
Yeah.
And now major entity is like, well, let's see what you got. What does this cause panic or not panic, but I mean, what does this system look like? Do you have to now create a lot of different things so you can show up and, look professional? Like, yes, we have your solution, or
Yeah.
what's happening on your end as you prepare to pilot with Chicago?
Yeah. Well, I think one way to answer that is ignorance is pretty incredible. We didn't know who we were working with. We didn't know the organization. We didn't know how they're this premium opportunity, what we had in front of us. We were just at a point in the technology development curve where we're like, we know this is going to work. We know there's a lot of work to mature it, but we didn't know, like, we were just doing research at that point. We were like, okay, let's just demonstrate this works for them, and let's just do it to the best of our ability. And if we say we're going to do something, let's get it done. And that was the mentality. Credit to those guys. They taught us wastewater treatment. They taught us the value of what we were doing, and how it fits in the wastewater plan, and what, where we should put it. But yeah, just ignorance. We didn't know. We had no idea that it was such a great opportunity until we started getting more and more publicity because of it. But looking back, I think we'd be much more nervous today if we got that opportunity than we were at that time.
Absolutely. Ignorance is bliss.
For sure.
What were the results? Is this still running there, or is it still being used to polish? Is it tertiary or quaternary treatment? Yeah. Is this still
Yeah.
ongoing 10 years later?
Where we started was actually looking at tertiary. And, we were at their O'Brien treatment plant and later to the Stickney treatment plant. And I'm sure most of your audience knows, but these are a 400 million gallon per day facility and a billion gallon per day facility on, if you do tertiary. And at that time, that's where everyone thought algae was a tertiary. It's a polishing system.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very effective at, removing to very low phosphorus numbers, less than, 0.05 parts per million of phosphorus, which is difficult to do with chemicals or biology.
Yeah.
Algae can do that, but the reality is it's expensive to put it on the tertiary side for polishing. In certain applications, it works, but at that scale, it's not the right application. It's not the right place to put the algae system. So we actually did a year of trials on tertiary and came to that assessment. And we said, well, where does it actually fit? And what we came to was, let's do anaerobic digestion side stream treatment. So, where an Animox or Austera type system is placed at a treatment plant, this concentrated side stream. What we found is that algae can treat that water really, really well, and you basically get more bang for your buck. And that's like, we sell these vertical belts, and there's a certain surface area. And what I mean by bang for the buck is that surface area can remove more grams of phosphorus per day per meter squared of belt surface area there than tertiary. So actually, a few years into our relationship with them, we said, let's move to side stream anaerobic digestion effluent, and that's where it really has a lot of promise. And the results were great there. I think we published a couple papers with them on the academic side, and then then what happened? Well, there's a little thing called PFAS. I don't know if anyone's heard of that, but there's a lot of concern and effort in municipalities around the world about how do you manage PFAS in your biosolids. Well, most treatment plants put their biosolids through anaerobic systems, and that's really being evaluated at the core level at MWRD and other sites. Is putting that material in a digester the best use for it, or should you incinerate it? Should you do something else with it to alleviate this PFAS concern? Well, guess what? That's now the new priority there. So they need to figure out, is our digesters around in the future at their facility and others around the U.S.? I think they will be, but they need to make that decision before they decide how they're going to remove nutrients from the water of these digesters first. So it's kind of at a pause point until they get clarity there.
Walking it back a little bit, you guys are going again from a kind of a pilot lab scale solution of growing algae and you're now rolling it out at the largest wastewater plant in the country. It sounds like there were some mechanical challenges to building that solution on a much larger scale. And in this case, not just commercial, but a large scale, whether it was polishing or for even the digest state, right? I imagine the flow that you're dealing with is much more than what you're dealing with back at Iowa in the lab. What are some of those mechanical issues that you're dealing with to essentially build a whole new system and scale it up? That's a big undertaking, right? Before you can even go on site, you have to be able to have the solution that's going to fit the issue. And so, yeah, what was that process like?
Yeah. Well, there was a number of issues that we encountered, and maybe just to give you a sense of scale, is a lot of the research we were doing in the lab at Iowa State was on the order of 5 liters of volume is the size. The first project we did with, and those what we call lab scale systems. When we moved to Chicago, we did our first pilot projects, which is 1,000 liters, and these things are huge now. And, there's a little bit of work to scale to that point, but we managed that pretty well. Well, a few years into the relationship, we agreed with Chicago that we need to take this thing to commercial scale. And at that time, I'm now out of the university. GWT is now founded, and one of our investors, a company called Dwarfer Companies, really interested us. And this is even before they invested. They said, "Hey, you guys have a really nice science experiment, and Martin, you're building these pilots, and Martin's not I'm not that type of engineer or manufacturer." And they said, "Hey, let us support you." So we actually took investment from them and partnered with them as our manufacturing partner. And even with the great skill set that they brought, designing a system, they took this thing and scaled it up, 1,000x in scale. And with that has a lot of issues, because what we were doing is, our system may look very simple. It's vertical conveyor belts rotating slowly in and out of the water. Well, no one's ever built a system like this before. There's really not a lot of analogs out there that are similar. It's vertical belts rotating slowly. They need to rotate without any malfunction. And there was a lot of, we always say bloodletting in the process of redesigning. And, the one that I'll mention, which is really painful for us, is we initially had trouble with these top drive shafts. Basically, these top drive shafts have to hold a lot of weight. They rotate really slow. They need to be perfectly aligned so the belt doesn't track one way or the other. Well, so we're doing all these different tests, and we had a couple shafts break, which is not acceptable. So we would repair one and test a new design. I remember going, flying into Chicago, and we had a big tour. I don't know if you remember, Matt Damon was in a water documentary. I can't remember what that was called. And they actually wanted to come and look at our system and have this in the backdrop of one of their conversations
Oh my
with
gosh.
MWRD. And so I fly out there, and at that time, our top shafts were a tube. It was a tube, and then so the inside was hollow, and these things are rotating. And I remember the day before they got there, inside of the tube, a piece of metal came loose. And I shit you not, as they're trying to do this video, there is a metal tinking every time this thing rotates, going ting, 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 ting on the top of this thing. And mechanically, it looked great. It was fine. But it's so annoying on from a sound perspective. And, that's just one, maybe one soft one. It's gosh, we had this huge opportunity to get all this publicity. And I don't even know if they ever used the video, because it was this tinking of this metal on the inside. So yeah, we went through a lot of versions. We currently are selling our Generation 5 system. That means that there was 4 generations that didn't work very well. But I think we're at a point now where we've debugged it. We've learned the mechanics and the engineering, manufacturing of the system, and it's pretty robust now.
That's incredible that you found a manufacturing partner and they invested in you. That's quite a partnership to have found. With the shaft, I mean, was the algae growing and weighing it down and breaking the shaft? Or, what was breaking? Or was it the manufacturing, or, was it materials? What was happening that's causing them to break?
Yeah. So the benefit of our system is we have a maximum weight. So we keep the biofilm very thin on our system. So if you're familiar with an RBC, these rotating shafts, they will break, the bearings will break, just because of how much weight builds up on these, because there's not a mechanism really to remove that weight from the system. It just keeps accumulating. Ours doesn't have that problem. We have a maximum weight. We keep the algae thin, harvest it off. Our problem was really, we had a shaft that needed to span a certain distance. And what we found is that shaft has a little bit of indentation as it's rotating. If it's not perfectly straight, you get a little bit of, you know, out of centricity there, and it puts stress on any weld point in there, and that's where it hits. So the weld points would, be the stress point, and as it flexed, we would actually, break the weld and break the shaft. Wow, yeah, that was a year or two of issues. Now I think we've figured out what the problem was. Is you need a certain straightness tolerance.
So in 2021, you guys are part of Imagine H2O, which is a water tech accelerator, well known in the industry. What was that experience like? I'm interested in hearing what it was like being in an accelerator, and not just what it did for your business, but also just the experience, because you're running your business, and then you're also kind of have what I imagine is homework, and you have these advisors.
Yeah. Well, to start the answer is that was, if not the most valuable, one of the most valuable things that we did as an organization is get involved with Imagine H2O. Um, Actually, at that time, when we decided to get involved with them, we had already sold a commercial facility. It wasn't built yet, but we had already sold a facility, and we were like, do we need to do an accelerator? We're already like kicking ass here, but I was just naive, but we end up deciding to do it because they sold us that, there's a network here and, things happen in a certain way in water and you'll get something out of it. So we end up getting involved and I was blown away. The mentorship, the connections that we made were outstanding, and friends that I made there, other companies that were involved. There's this whole network effect was incredibly powerful for sure. But the most important thing was the water industry is very unique. How things get done, where decisions get made, who are the decision makers. They have an incredible program to train an entrepreneur like me didn't grow up in the water space. You learn how things get done. And that was the most important thing, is just getting a sense and talking to the people that have been there successfully or unsuccessfully scaling technologies and businesses in the water space, just picking their mind and understanding where these landmines are, understanding the key type of people you need to meet. Here's the investors that are good, here's the ones that aren't so good. And that was an incredible experience. And I'd recommend to anyone that's wanting to scale into water. Is we did Imagine H2O. After that, we did the Brew 2.0 in Milwaukee. These programs are incredible to build your network, but also just learn how things happen in the industry that you're in.
Yeah, there's a lot of really impressive technologies that have come out of that accelerator. And so I have no doubt you don't regret being a part of it, and being one of those alumni. You're highlighted on their website. And I'm curious, and maybe it was during this time, maybe not. When did it become apparent to you that GWT would actually have to buy the algae back from the customers in order to, I don't know if I'm interested in kind of what precipitated that? Was it, hey, what the heck are we going to do with this algae? And you needed to come up with a disposal solution. When does the fertilizer pellet solution come into play? Because you guys aren't just a treatment thing. You also, right, create fertilizer out of this algae. And so when does that back end become apparent, and how do you develop that part of your business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think how it all came about is really, a realization about what the value of algae-based treatment is compared to conventional bacterial or chemical-based solutions. And really, one of the differentiators for algae is you're creating something valuable during the treatment process versus a cost to dispose of. If the bacterial sludge or chemical sludge that you're producing, with conventional systems, you're spending a huge amount of your operating costs disposing of that material and dealing with the material. And with that realization, it's like, well, we're fundamentally different. Those products don't have a use, or there's limited use for those. Ours, there's a lot of things being made out of algae. We can't make everything that, algae, with wastewater grown material, you can't make nutraceuticals or, cosmetics or something out of it, right? But there's a number of things where you can create value for the customer. And so we decided we really wanted to lean into that differentiation. And it's just really kind of our core business model now. And let me tell you about that. So right now we're producing algae at a wastewater plant. Our primary revenue value driver to our customers is cleaning that water cost effectively. That's really, over the past 5 years, that's all that's really mattered. The algae is kind of a nice story, it's marketing, but there's not a lot of dollars associated with making it into soil amendment or soil fertilizer. But we always knew that there's more value for the algae than just fertilizer. We picked fertilizer because it's simple, easy way to process that material into a soluble product. But there's more value in it than that. So we've had this vision in the business is really to leverage not just the cost savings of not producing sludge, chemical or bacterial sludge, and creating revenue, but also to really create a meaningful amount of revenue for the customer. And what I mean by that is right now we're buying the algae back at 25 cents a kilogram. It's maybe it offsets 30% of the operating costs of the system if you produce that, which is meaningful, right? It's if you compare it to the alternative, which is a cost to dispose of, it's great. But really what our goal is to create enough value from the algae by going to the right market that you can offset 100% of the operating costs, really meaningfully reduce the costs of treatment because of the value of the algae. And we're really close. So I don't know if I've talked about this publicly before, but we just finished our second year of field trials to use the algae as a soil amendment. And what that means is instead of using it for turf grass fertilizer, where the goal is nitrogen, phosphorus to fertilize the turf grass, but rather use the algae as a soil amendment to improve soil health. And the value of improving soil health for row crops like corn and wheat, alfalfa, potatoes, we've done these trials and we've demonstrated that our algae, when it's applied to these crops, you can increase yield. You can reduce the amount of fertilizer inputs you need to. And guess what? Instead of that algae being worth 25 cents, we can offer an ROI to the farmer of 3 to 4x and charge $5, $10 a kilogram. Well, now if there's that much value for the algae, we share that with the customer, which is what we'll do over the next several years. Now we're really offsetting the costs of treatment for them. Now, if you're trying to compete with a bacterial chemical-based system, you don't have that value driver. So that's really what's exciting for us and a differentiator for algae systems is once you can, get firm offtakes and deliver that value back to the customer, their treatment costs get less. And guess what? If treatment costs are less, the adoption of our core equipment, the core business, we are a water business. Like we say our first and foremost, we're a water treatment business. But if we reduce the cost of treatment, now you can drive more RAB sales and really make an impact at more facilities.
That is all really exciting. I think it's really great when companies can find a way to really partner. The traditional sort of sell them something and let us know if something breaks or let us know when you need a new one. You see that a lot. And so more and more you see companies where, again, you're not just selling them something, but you're also saying, we're going to be your customer going forward. You're going to make this algae and actually we're going to be giving you money. It's a relationship. You got ahead of me because I was going to ask, what other uses for the algae you're looking at? And so that's exciting. You're finding higher value things that you can now continue to make your technology more attractive by saying, hey, the ROI on this thing's going to be fast. I mean, a year, 2, 5, or whatever, because we're actually going to end up giving you more money than you paid to even buy this thing in the first place over a 10-year, 20-year span. And to your point, you're also, most importantly, going to achieve the nutrient results that you're right with. And so I'm kind of curious, how has it been with adoption of this? It's Slater, Iowa, your hometown where you're at, they use it. Pasco, Washington. I guess the real question I'm curious about is, what are the objections you hear when you go on sales calls and your team goes on sales calls?
Yeah. I mean, we've been developing the RAB technology for about 12 years. And now what are we competing with? We're competing with putting some chemicals in the water, and like chemical reactions are absolutely predictable. Or we're competing against, activated sludge type processes, which have been, developed over many, many years with thousands of researchers around the world optimizing those systems. And you can have a pretty high level of confidence in how those systems are going to work because of the sheer number of data that's been collected. on those types of systems and installations and reference points. So the biggest hurdle we have is we are a young company. The technology is not as mature, and there's a lot of opportunity to collect additional data, get more references, and that's the number one thing, that hurdle that we have to overcome, is the newness of it. We're proud. We have 20,000 data points of treatment that we've collected over the years at 40 different project sites, but really that doesn't scratch the surface of what we're competing with. So the newness is one thing, and the second thing is the water industry is not an industry that likes to take risk. If you think about the decision-making process of how a new wastewater plant gets built, it's, let's just say, on the municipal side, you have a city council, a utility manager, a plant manager. Like, what's incentivizing them to take risk to do something new? Well, you better have a lot of cost savings. That could be one, but really, like, the incentives of doing tried and true is, those are not risk takers. Why take the risk on doing anything new? So there's a hurdle there. And then you have the consulting engineers that need to stamp their approval that this thing is going to work. Well, what's the benefit of them to do that? And what's the benefit of a consulting engineer to spend additional hours on a project that they may not be compensated for, to put together a new design for something they haven't done before? So there's these different levels of risk adversity that you have to overcome. You need to get regulatory approvals where you need a lot of data, and then you need to have a cost profile that, when someone calculates all these negative risks of it, it needs to be a lot less cost than what you're competing with. So that's, that all together is really what's the challenge in developing not just our technology, but any new water business or water technologies. You have this inertia you have to overcome, and every day it gets easier. Every day
Mhm.
there's more projects that come online. Yeah, that's the biggest challenge for us, for sure.
Seeing is believing, and it seems like you guys have embraced that, because from what I understand, you have at least 12 little pilot units that run around and
Yep.
plug into plants, and you can show people it. Are all 12 deployed right now? Or are they just spread across the country running? Again, seeing is believing. Have those been really pivotal with getting engineers and utilities to see the magic of algae?
Absolutely. I mean, these are critical for us. Seeing is believing. When you can walk in, see, touch, smell, look, watch, take samples from of a system that's treating on your specific water, that's an incredibly powerful sales tool. So we invested early on to have a fleet of pilot systems. Yeah, you mentioned these. We basically have mobile greenhouses that sit on a flatbed truck. Fork them off, you set them on site, and you can get these things running in a matter of hours. And then you can collect the data. You can collect the data to, just get comfort on a system. And that's our best sales strategy right now, is to deploy these pilots and get it in the customer's hands so they have comfort. And oftentimes what we hear from them initially is they see a PowerPoint, they say, wow, there's a lot of moving parts here. I don't know if we can, this thing's really mechanical. I don't know if we can maintain it. And then at the end of the pilot, oftentimes they're like, wow, this is, we haven't been in the pilot for 3 days, and it just kind of runs itself. It's super simple. It's very passive. There's not a lot of decision making on it today. And the mechanics are very simple. It's bearings and sprockets and chains that are, the simplest service technician can maintain those. So the pilot's useful in a number of ways to get people comfortable that's going to treat the water, but also that it's mechanically something that they feel confident that they can maintain over 20 or 30 years.
Absolutely. Over the span of the last, I think it's 10 years of building GWT, you've had 4 kids. You mentioned your wife also has a really impressive career on her own. And so I'm curious, how do you mentally separate GWT and being a dad and being with the family? I think everybody sort of struggles with being able to turn off. And so, how do you do it?
Yeah, well, I think it starts with my wife, which is a rock star. She does have, so she's the director of finance at Iowa State University, and she has a pretty grueling job herself. But her life is more regimented, and you come in at 8 o'clock in the morning, and 5 o'clock you're done, and you can kind of check out for the day most days. As an entrepreneur, we don't live that type of lifestyle. It's chaotic, it's uncertain, and so having her there as the rock to really support, in the good and bad times is the key. Today's an example. So I'm in Iowa and there's no school for the kids today because there's a big snowstorm that came in last night. So it's like, okay, well, I've got to go into work today because I've got a lot of things to do. And she was able to take off. So I think that's probably the big one. I also, I don't know if our board would necessarily love this point, but I think it's actually a good support from them. At one point, I care deeply about my family, right? And I want to be there for my kids and not miss the activities that I want to be involved in. And at one point, I was like, man, I don't want to travel as much. And it's not necessarily like I'm traveling every day like some people do, and I really respect them for that. But I'm traveling on a 2 or 3 or 4 times a month, and I say to our board, I say, hey guys, like I know it's in the best interest of our shareholders and you and the company that I'm travel. I'm most meaningful salesman in the business and tell the story in a really strong way. I say, hey, I'm putting a lot on my wife right now to always to be gone traveling, and I want to get a stipend so I can hire a nanny while I'm gone. And I'm like, it's going to be in the best interest of us. I'm not asking for crazy amount of money. It's like I want a stipend so I can hire a nanny. So when I'm gone, I can do this, and it's kind of a message to my wife that I can support her. And there's like no conversation. It was like, yep, absolutely. So our board was incredibly supportive of that. I've been blessed to have the leadership in the business to understand that there's a family work-life balance that they respect. I'm highly motivated. I don't think they have to, push me harder than I'll push myself on, advancing
Mm.
GWT, but having that support it's been meaningful and useful for us along the way. So now if I travel, we have a lady that comes by that helps out my wife with the kids. It's like, so I think finding creative solutions like that have been really impactful for us along the way to create that balance.
That's awesome that you were able to, establish that boundary and get a solution and what you needed. And that's incredible. You have worked really hard and, you were awarded the 2025 EY Entrepreneur of the Year, at least in your region. How did that feel? How did that come about? Did somebody nominate you? Did they find you?
I would say EY does an incredible job with how serious they take their Entrepreneur of the Year competition. And I've been blessed to be a part of it. There was just the national competition a few weeks ago, and I was blown away at the resources they put to having it be a real competition that has real, metrics to compare things. And a lot of these awards, it's like, someone and it's, they nominate you and you kind of get it. This wasn't the case. I actually don't know who nominated me, but one day I got an email from EY and said, "Hey, you've been nominated for this. We think it's really interesting." And they sent people to our office to interview me. They give me all the different questions about growing the business and hear the story. And then there's a panel of 30 folks or so that are judges to compete with like hundreds of people. And then they end up selecting us, and we won the Heartland Award through EY. It's really incredible honor. But, kind of bridging back to our last question, which is about the family, the EY Heartland Award Gala, where they're announcing the award, it happened to be on the day that my wife and I were already planning to go on vacation with the family. And so we were going to drive, 12 hours to the Smoky Mountains from Iowa. And I'm like, my wife, Rachel, I'm like, hey, can we, I need to go to this thing. You need to be traveling with with the kids and drive across the country. What if me and my daughter, Charlie, go to this thing together? And it's like black tie, so she gets this great dress. And so my plus one was my 4-year-old daughter, and probably one of the best experiences of my life. Not even because I won it, because during the awards gala, the MC comes around and he has an award. It's like best dressed, and he comes up to my daughter and she won the best dressed award, and she was so proud in front of all these people. And then she was able to be on stage with me when I accepted my award, and something I'll never forget. I don't think she ever will either, but kind of meshing the family with the company is also, try to do that every once in a while as well.
That's a really beautiful moment. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
So GWT just had its first year of profitability, and I believe you're currently in the process of raising a Series B. So I'm curious. I mean, you guys are clearly growing. You have some really exciting avenues for, soil amendments. Are there any new applications you're looking in? Right, you guys are in food and beverage, municipal wastewater. agriculture? Are there more applications you're looking to grow into? Are there new geographical markets you want to go into? Maybe even, I don't know, go to Australia or South America. What's the short-term goals for GWT as you go into 2026 as we record this?
Yeah. Yeah, so close to closing the Series B, and with that funding, the goal is really probably threefold. One is to enter new markets with the product. One that's of specific interest to us is the ethanol industry. We are really well suited to enter putting in anaerobic systems and algae systems in regular grain ethanol plants. That's incredible opportunity that doesn't exist today. We're creating that. So further investment into that market. And the goal is someone in the investment round will have relationships internationally where we're not, our intention isn't to become to open offices in Australia and in Europe, but rather partner with someone that has existing footprint and they can leverage our technology in those. And then lastly, it's, the point I made about being a young company, young technology is we continue to invest in answering all the questions that we get asked. You know, how does it perform in a certain environment when you change pH, when you change temperature, when you do these things that happen within the wastewater plant, what's the reaction of the system? So further investing in just creating more granularity in our understanding of how our system works, in addition to trying to get more systems out there, of course.
I don't think it's a secret that ultimately your goal is to sell GWT, whether it's to a larger water company in the market that wants to add you to their portfolio. Private equity is making more and more plays in the industry. I'm curious, once you get to that point and say you do sell, do you think you'll start another venture? Is there another opportunity that you want to go after? Say someone offers you $100 million right now and you can go off into the sunset and say goodbye to GWT. What's next for you if someone were to buy you out tomorrow?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would say that is absolutely the goal. The vision for the business is to bring it to a certain scale and then take it to a more mature company to take it to the next level. I'm personally quite excited and interested in working for a large company. I came right out of school and did startup. So, whether I'll love the corporate life or not, I'm interested in doing that for a few years to see what it's like. But yeah, eventually I think, I feel like I've been able to build a skill set over the years on, how to create a hard tech business, how to fund a hard tech business, how to, create a team. And so I do believe that there will be another startup in the future at some point. I don't know what that field would be, but I think that I would be much better at doing it the second time around, a little bit straighter path instead of this windy thing where I figure out a lot of things, so maybe the hard way because I haven't done it before. So yeah, I think first interested in working for a large company, see what that world's like, and then probably start a company again in the future.
Algae has so much potential, from cleaning pollution to creating products that enhance agriculture. It seems like it could be a mechanism to make circular economies possible. We just have to nail down how to harness it effectively. But I honestly think it could reshape the world. It'll be interesting to see who buys GWT in the future and how they deploy it nationally, globally. I especially like the fact that GWT is paying their customers for the algae and finding more and more profitable applications and markets for it. It's just a cool business model. Well, that's it for this episode. Thank you for listening to the end, and stay tuned for the next episode of The Meter.